this month I went through all of the yarn that I had in my stash, and this is most of it. Unfortunately, it's not all, but that's what fits in this box. So I went through and found all the partial skeins. Some had tangled together, so I untangled them all and wound them into little yarn balls so that I could organize better. So I have a lot of plans for this yarn. I don't have much to show for it in this episode, but for now, why don't you grab a drink or maybe your project and just sit down and relax with me while we chat about what I've been up to this month. Hey there, thanks for joining me today. It's the end of March, so it's about time I sit down to film another of these podcast episodes. So this does make the 4th episode so far, and I'd like to thank you so much for watching if you're a returning visitor, and if you're new here, then welcome. My name is Abby, and I run the blog Sew Homey, and this is where I like to share my monthly updates on what I've been crocheting or knitting. So you'll find all the projects I've been working on, the new yarn additions, and any projects that I'm designing. I like to share all of that information on this podcast. So we'll go ahead and just dive into this episode. I don't have a whole lot to update you on. I haven't done a ton in March. I went home for spring break. It was my dad's birthday on the 20th, so I got to spend a lot of time with him and my family there, so that was a lot of fun. But yeah, not a whole lot to share with that. So I'll just get into the projects that I have been working on. So we'll start with the finished objects section, and unfortunately this is very short. So if you watched my last podcast episode, I was completely obsessed with socks. That's all that I really knit on in February, and I really enjoyed it. It was my first experience. So yeah, like I said, I was completely obsessed with socks. Back in February, I learned for the first time how to knit a cuff down sock, and then I also worked on a toe up sock. So that was part of my work in progress portion of that episode. But I have one finished object, so I'm going to keep this in the finished object section because I did finish the sock. I finished one sock, and it was knit from the toe up, and this one was written by Carmen Yorison. And I'll link her pattern below. She has really great videos on how to knit this thing, or this sock. And this is what it looks like. I had this sock yarn in my stash for so long. And yeah, I finally got to use it. I learned how to knit socks. So yeah, it was the toe up, and it was a really interesting construction. It was really cool because it's like a seamless, you can't even tell on the toe that I started there. So that was a really cool technique. And then I also learned how to do the German short rows for the heel portion of the sock. And then the rest of it was pretty much the same, just stocking it all the way up until the cuff, which was a 2x1 ribbing, I believe, or 2x2. But this was an enjoyable pattern. But again, I only have one finished. It fits really nicely. It's very snug on my foot. I probably could have knit it at a looser gauge, but I don't think it will bother me. I do like my socks to fit a little tighter. So I'm excited to finish the other sock, which we'll just go ahead and go into the whips, because the other sock is almost done. I've just stopped at the heel portion. I just have to knit the rest of the leg portion and then the cuff. So basically, so I don't have a whole lot left to finish on this sock, but unfortunately I have just left it sitting there because I started on a lot of other projects. But yeah, again, check out the pattern by Carmen. She has a really great pattern if you would like to learn how to knit socks. I would suggest this pattern because all of the videos that go with it make it so easy. And I believe she also has a podcast too. I've watched like only a couple episodes, but she seems really sweet, so definitely go give her some love and check out her podcast as well. Oh, I forgot one more finished object before we get into the rest of the whips. So one more finished object, I made this coaster. I was making a tutorial for half double crochet in the third loop in the round, and it's a really unique stitch. I really love that stitch pattern, and if you've seen any of my patterns, the Womenage Wilderness Trail Toboggan and my Beaver Creek Beanie, both of those use the stitch half double crochet in the third loop, but they're in rows rather than rounds. So whenever you crochet it in rows, it looks like a knit 1x1 ribbing, and I really like that you can almost mimic the knit stitch or the stockinette stitch with crochet. I just think it's really cool. But whenever you use it in the round, it looks completely different. It just looks like a giant spiral, or I guess it's not giant, but a spiral. So I chose a gray yarn for the tutorial just because it showed up on camera really well. And what I had in my stash was a wool yarn, so I decided to go ahead and keep the circle that I had crocheted for the tutorial, and I just cut the yarn and then I wove in the end, and then I decided to felt it, and I made this coaster. So the backside just looks kind of plain, but I wanted to see if the stitch pattern actually remained on the front, and it sort of does. You can see the spiral, so I was pleased with that. I need a few more coasters to keep my table from getting marred. So I think we can go ahead and get into the rest of the work in progress that I have been working on this month. So the first project I'd like to show you is this Easter egg that I really need to finish before this weekend to gift it to these little kids. But my friend from Houston, she's my really good friend. She used to be my roommate actually, and she sent me some of the yarn, which I'll talk about in the next section, but she sent me this really fuzzy, bulky yarn, and it looked kind of Eastery to me, so I decided to make little Easter eggs, and I was going to make this one into a bunny, so I was going to add some ears to it, and then stitch on some eyes and a nose, but that's kind of just like the shape that I was going for, and then I'll stuff it, of course, to make it into like a little Easter egg bunny. I'll try to find a picture of what I was going for, and we'll see if I can accomplish that, and I'll make sure to take some pictures to show in next episode, and I really need to get them done so I can get them to the little kids that I was going to give them to. I was also going to try to make a bunny. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that anymore. I think I like the Easter egg idea, but I had like the shape of a head, and then I was trying to find an ear pattern that I liked, but I just couldn't really, I'm not sure that I'm really happy with it. Like, this is way too large for the size head that I made. I was going to make it into one of those little, those loveys, because there's a little 1-year-old that I was going to gift this one to, so I was thinking maybe he'd like the lovey rather than an egg, but I think with the time constraint, I will probably just make 3 different versions of a bunny egg. We'll see how that works though. I also want to try to see if I can make an egg that actually opens, so that then I can just stuff it with some candy or something for the older boys. So yeah, we'll see if I can get that done this weekend. Or before this weekend, not on this weekend, before this weekend, because Easter is Sunday. That's probably enough about this project, so I'm really excited to share this next project that I've been working on, because I applied to be a pattern tester for Janine Myska. She's her Instagram handle is Knits and Knots Winnipeg, and she lives in Canada. She's a crochet knitwear designer, and her work is gorgeous. Definitely go give her a look if you've never heard of her before, especially if you like to crochet, because she makes these gorgeous garments. And I used to think that crochet really wasn't for garments. That's what knitting was for. However, she has definitely changed my mind. All of her work is really beautiful. And yeah, again, go check her out. But I applied to be a pattern tester, and I've never actually tested a pattern before for somebody else. So this is totally new to me. I'm really excited about it. And I started this week, just yesterday actually, I started on this project. And so I'm testing the pattern for her Mountain Peaks Cardigan, which is actually a pattern that is in her book that's coming out later this year. So I'll try to give more updates whenever her book is actually coming out. But the patterns have to get tested before the book gets published, all that stuff. So yeah, I'm just super excited to be doing this. So I finished one of the front panels this morning, actually. I added the last few rows. And this is what it looks like. It has this this nice ribbing down here, but everything is just half double crochet. So it's a completely beginner friendly pattern, and it's really fast, honestly. There's not a whole lot to it. You just have to pay attention to the striping pattern, so when to change colors, and then also at the top there's a little bit of shaping so that you kind of get a, not a complete V, but it does taper down just a little bit at the top, so you have to pay attention on when to decrease. But it's super, super simple. So with her cardigan, she chose 3 different colors, and she made each section a different color. So there's 3 different sections, and she just goes from one color to the next and then to the next. And actually it's crocheted bottom up, so the first color goes at the bottom and then you work your way up. Just technicality out of the way. But in her instructions in the pattern and in the email she sent us, she said that we could play with our own striping pattern. And after going to the store, because I had to go to the store and find a yarn because I was having trouble meeting gauge with the yarn that I have here. So luckily I was able to find one, and I got it from Hobby Lobby, and I'll talk about that in the next section. But with this yarn, it met gauge perfectly for me, and I was able to work it out. But whenever I went, they didn't have enough skeins for the colors that I wanted, so I ended up just choosing 2 colors, and then I worked it out to where I could get my own striping pattern with just 2 colors. So I ended up with more of this off-white color than the green, so I made the green stripes smaller so that I could use more, and then I used more of the white color at the bottom just so that I could have enough yarn without running out or having to order more, because I'm worried that it won't be back in time, which I have until nearly the end of April to finish this, but I'd like to finish it as soon as possible because I'm also testing another pattern for, her name is Lark. I'm going to pronounce that incorrectly, but she is from Fiber Tales on Instagram, and then she also has the Fiber Tales podcast on YouTube. Definitely go check her out, and I'll link her below. But I think it was in episode 42, and again, I will double check and make sure that the correct link is below. But she has a sweater that she needs tested, so I'm also going to be testing for that sweater. I just don't know the deadline for that one yet, so I want to get this one out of the way as soon as possible. But again, this project is very quick. I think the most time it took was to figure out how I wanted to do the striping pattern, and I'm still fearful that I might run out of the white color whenever it gets to the sleeves, but I did some math and I think I will have enough, so I'll keep you updated. But yeah, I'm really happy with it. I'm kind of thinking maybe I should have switched the colors, but the yardage and this number of skeins that I found unfortunately won't let me do that. So yeah, I'm hoping that this will turn out the way that I want. But I'm very grateful to be testing for her. It's a really great experience. I am just really excited to do this for the first time. That's pretty much all that I have been working on this month. And so now I'll just talk about those new yarn additions that I referred to earlier. So the first one is this Bernat Velvet Plus. And it's 100% polyester. It's a number 6 super bulky weight yarn. And it's actually really hard to crochet in the rounds, at least to start it out, because whenever you make the magic circle to close it, it doesn't want to close. So maybe I should have just done chains and then added stitches in that way. That actually would have been an option. I didn't even think about that till just now. But it's a little bit harder to work with because you have to feel for the stitches. You can't actually see them because of all of the fuzz. So you kind of have to know what you're doing, and you really have to keep count if you want to make sure you don't skip something. So it's super soft. I really like it, and I think the end product looks good. It's just kind of hard to get there. Just because of the nature of fuzzy yarns. But I really like how bulky it is too, because the projects work up much faster as well. That's pretty much this one. I will probably have a lot of yarn. I might even have this full skein left over, so I'm gonna have to figure out another project. So if you have any ideas, please let me know in the comment section what you use fuzzy yarns for, if you've ever used it. And then my next yarn addition, I got 2 different colors. So this is Yarn Bee, and it's called Bambootiful. It's 50% cotton and then 50% viscose, which comes from bamboo. And it's a 4-ounce skein. You get 257 yards per skein, and it's number 3 or DK weight yarn, or light. But I've really enjoyed it. The one thing is that while you're crocheting, it does split. So you have to be careful to make sure to grab all of the strands with your hook and not just go through half of them or leave half behind. I've done that a few times, but once you get the hang of it, it really goes smoothly. This colorway is Basil. And then I also got this one, which is Linen. And it's really soft. I really like it. The stitch definition is like perfect. You see every stitch. It looks really pretty. And since I think I might have some of the green left over, I am thinking about making a crochet tapestry. I was thinking maybe flowers or something for spring. I kind of need to dress up the wall. I feel like it's so bare every time I sit down to film. I just don't have anything to hang behind me, so I might make something with the yarn that I have in my stash, because that's another thing I've been up to this month. I wound like all of the partial skeins of yarn that I have into little yarn balls so that I can actually make something out of them, and I'm just trying to spring clean, get rid of a lot of those yarns and use them up so that I can make room for new yarns, because there's a lot of yarns that I would love to try out there. I just need to get rid of that big box so that, I don't know, I just feel like I'll have more room for it if I get rid of that stuff. And since I've been cleaning up my yarn and trying to make it a little bit more concise, less messy, I've been thinking about projects that you can use your leftover yarns for, or your scrap yarn. So I actually made a video earlier this month that was about using up your scrap yarns. I found 20 different patterns and came up with 10 different project ideas, and I'll put the video up here if you're interested in watching it. But if you have a lot of scrap yarn, definitely go check that video out. I found a lot of patterns. I went through so many. It took a lot of time, but I am really happy with the patterns I did choose, because they're patterns that I actually would like to crochet. So I have some plans for my yarn over there, and one of the patterns that I can think off the top of my head right now, I really want to try making the moss stitch Moss Stitch Zipper Pouch. That one's hard for me to say. I really think that one's gorgeous. I have a lot of worsted weight yarn that will work perfectly for that. I think I can come up with 4 colors that go together and make a little zipper pouch. Also, I've really been eyeing that leaf soap saver that I went through in the video. I have some cotton yarn that I really want to try that pattern on. And since I have been crocheting with this beautiful yarn, this bamboo to full yarn, I guess, with the cardigan, I really like the stitch definition, and I think it would go really great for a crochet wall tapestry. And I did find a couple of patterns that I put in that video. I'm not sure that they would go perfectly with that, but I really like the idea of making a wall hanging. So I will hopefully maybe have something to show for that in the next episode. But those are just kind of some of the projects that I guess are on my to make list. Just since I made that video, I thought I'd throw some of those things in there. So if there's anything that you would like to make or any projects that you've been working on, please let me know. I love to look at new patterns. I'd love to see what you guys are working on and what kind of projects you guys are interested in. So I think I'll wrap up the episode with that, and I'd like to thank you so much for watching. And if you did enjoy this video, please hit that like button. And if you'd like to see more videos like this one, then please subscribe to my channel. And thanks again. I will see you guys in the next video.